I absolutely did not start out trying to open a micro school. I was just trying to support parents and families who I knew who were kind of like, where this epiphany was happening in their life of like I can do this. I can help. I can teach my child. They were just feeling empowered, but at the same time, they were feeling those same things that I felt, which are, can I do this? I don't know. Am I equipped? I don't want to be alone while I do it. All of those kind of like emotional and internal hindrances, and just wanting kind of that community and support while they did it, because that's just how our community is. I don't know. I can't speak for the entire homeschool community, but what I see for us is that they want to be involved, they want to be connected, and they don't want to do it alone, and they need the support. And then secondly, there's a barrier, just I would say, financially for families.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. We spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about the states that are expanding education freedom and giving families more options in how their kids are educated. But today is a little different. We're talking about a state that was actually trying to make it harder for parents to educate their kids. In Illinois, my home state, there was a bill introduced that would have forced homeschooling families to register with the state, something they've never had to do before, and potentially subjecting parents who didn't comply to criminal truancy charges. The bill sponsor claimed it was about protecting kids from abuse, but did she have any data or studies showing that was the case in the homeschooling community? No. Parents came out against this bill in huge numbers, to the point that the state capitol building had to be shut down with people still waiting outside. On today's episode, we're talking with a husband and wife who jumped in to push back on this bill. We'll hear why they got involved, learn more about their own homeschooling journey, and talk about the micro school they're now running to help other families in Chicago make homeschooling work for their situation. I want to welcome Aziza and Chris Butler to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having
us. Hello,
us.
two of you. So excited to see you. Thanks so much for, I've got to know you guys over the course of this fight against this, really oppressive homeschool regulation bill. And it's just been such a joy to get to know the two of you and see your leadership. So I'm really excited for this conversation. It's folks who've listened to this show know that, I live in Illinois and am a homeschool dad. And so this was a very personal fight for me and my family. And I've just been thrilled with the leadership you all have shown. So we'll get going. First off, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Chris, what do you do for a living? And then Aziza, what did you do before becoming a homeschool mom?
Yeah, so it is it's great to be here, and it has been great to get to know you too, Dave. So I pastor a church in the south suburbs of Chicago, and also do work in the area of spiritual formation for Christians who are working in civics and politics around the country.
Nice. And Aziza, what did you do before you became a homeschool mom?
So I am actually a trained teacher. I graduated from the DePaul University. I was trained at University of Virginia, DePaul University, and it was my lifelong dream to be a teacher in the classroom, specifically the public school. And so I taught in Chicago public schools, then I taught at a Christian school. And then when I had my own child, I felt the Lord called me to homeschooling, which I had never heard of, and not never heard of, but had no experience with and no personal connection with. But we've been doing that now. Our oldest is 13.
Nice. And your kid's able to read. I always make the joke. My parents were in education. My mom was a high school teacher. Right. I always tell folks how my mom was a high school teacher, and when our oldest came to kind of semi-school age, and we were like, "Hey, we're going to homeschool," I think she was just amazed that eventually that my daughter was able to read, and that my other kids were able to read and do math, and I think she just thought that they'd be not schooled and uneducated. So fortunately, it hasn't turned out that way. That daughter has now graduated from college with a double major in philosophy and theology, so she's doing all right.
Yay.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, going back to that. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say it's really real. I fortunately had spent my time before. This is before I started pastoring things. I was working in education, kind of in the school reform space. So, when Aziza said that she felt like the Lord was talking to her about homeschool, I was like, we definitely will have as good a chance doing that as we will send them to the public school. So,
one thing about when I was, when I became a teacher in Illinois, I was just looking at the standards that we have. I was like, these standards are so low. Like, I remember it being I think the standards for like kindergarten. So like a 5-year-old, some of the standards were like, they should be able to, by the time they're 5, be able to recognize their name with a teacher's help. I was like, at 5, these are the goals. And, just some of the, like, be able to recognize most letters or some letters would be considered like proficient enough to pass kindergarten. I was like, this is really, really, really bad. And I actually just read an article about how they are considering lowering the standards even more. I said, oh, Lord, this is not good.
Oh, no, that's not what we need.
Right.
What made you all want to start homeschooling, and how did you feel about it?
So, okay, I'll go. Okay, so I think the first thing I just prayed. I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, what, as our daughter is going to grow up, like, where should I send her? Because I definitely want to teach. Or I should say, I definitely didn't ever think that I would, leave the public school. So I was like, I just need to know where to send her. And everywhere that I kind of thought would be good, it was just, I felt like the Lord was just like, no. And so, so I was like, maybe I can homeschool her. And I felt like the Lord had told me to do that. But honestly, I felt so intimidated by the thought and just so nervous about that. And I realized, I'm like, but I'm an actual teacher. I teach kids for a living. Why am I feeling all this trepidation about teaching my own child? And I just kind of realized, and I'll just speak to the broader education system, as educators, we kind of, kind of perpetuate that mentality of parents are not equipped enough to teach their children. This has to be a professional person with a professional background from the School of Education to be able to do that. Don't try to do it yourself. You're going to mess it up. Just let us do it. And we got this. And so, I didn't realize that then, but in my experience with teaching, as I got more into homeschooling, I realized kind of that connection is what really brought down helped me to realize that where my kind of calling and passion is, but it also helped me to see kind of where the failing is in the public school system. That so many kids are just being, that is just failing so many families. And it's because of this lack of parent engagement and the lack of a parent being able to see themselves as their child's primary educator, regardless of where they send their child, whether it's a private school or a public school. Like studies show that the number one indicator of a child's educational outcome is the degree to which a parent is involved. And so that's just something that was a mentality that was very much lacking in public schools, still lacking today, I think. But it's one thing, the superpower that all homeschooling families have, which is what leads to so many great successes, especially in my community. With the work that I do, so many families are able to just see their kids, just really thrive. Like they were having so many issues before, not just academic. They were having social issues, emotional issues, just behavior issues. And when they were able to get in the kind of like this homeschooling space, just small class, small size, small, parent-teacher ratio, teacher-student ratio, and just kind of an individualized approach, they were able to just thrive. So, but that's a little bit more, we'll talk probably more about that. But what got us into homeschooling was just the desire to get more out of their education and their journey. And I just really saw that I just really wanted to invest in them, not just academically, but even at their soul level and their spiritual level and their, just who they are as a person. I really just know that God called me to, just equip them in all of those ways. So what better way than to homeschooling and get that time?
I think one of the most important things, from my experience is the fact that you can give confidence to other parents to go and walk your footsteps and to understand that like you are your child's primary teacher.
Absolutely.
I've just seen time and again. I mean, my mother-in-law is kind of like a homeschooling OG. She was doing it in like the 70s and 80s when it was really weird, like the sheriff used to come and give the kids a reading test. And so it's really evolved quite a bit. And
Right.
Fortunately, a lot of the laws have evolved too. But one of the greatest gifts that I saw her give and have just seen throughout the community is empowering moms, and especially and parents, to say, hey, you're capable of this.
Absolutely.
Like, this is in you. You can do it. And in fact, even do a better job because your kid. It's going to be individualized. You can, you care deeply about them. It's a much smaller, group. So I think it's so powerful, and it's the thing that kind of will perpetuate this movement forward, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I think so. I mean, I think giving parents that kind of confidence is so important. That's why I really enjoy the work that we're doing. And I think so. My kind of journey to this, just so that people can kind of know, I started off actually in school funding advocacy spaces, trying to essentially get the state of Illinois to spend more money on schools. And part of my job, it was mainly, sort of mobilization of grassroots folks, but a part of that was to go and to do advocacy in Springfield. And I was constantly getting, sort of pushback, and not just, from one particular side of the political aisle. People were constantly, folks who are not from the city really were always saying, we spend a lot of money. Have you looked at how much money we already spend? And then we're not getting great outcomes. Have you looked at the kind of long-term trend in terms of the outcomes? And that's actually how I got into the education reform space, where I started to work more on school choice and kind of school quality improvement initiatives. And it was in that space of working on school choice that I came into contact with all of the kind of research and data that suggested that it was parent involvement that made the difference. Didn't matter, sort of geographical location, socioeconomic status. If the parent was involved, that was the number one indicator on a child's outcome. So I was, I didn't come to the idea of homeschool. And like I said, I was super open to it because I worked in a lot of public schools, really felt called to the city of Chicago, knew we wanted to live there. Didn't necessarily want to send our kids to the public schools in Chicago. We knew we wanted to have a lot of kids. So we're thinking about, paying for a private school. That probably was not going to be an option. So for me, it kind of like just narrowed down to like, hey, we're going to have to do this and just take it on.
Yeah. And I would also say that when we kind of like took the initiative to especially say like, hey, we're going to homeschool, for sure, I was like, oh gosh, like, what do I do? How do I do it? I had so many questions, like, what do I do? How do I do this? And do Black people even do this in general? Is it legal? Like we were just completely, I would say just newbies, like just, very uninformed about how this even happens and how this works. And because I had to navigate all of that on my own. And once I actually saw, I did a lot of, research into, what the laws were in Illinois, and, who are the people who are homeschooling, and what, what kind of resources are there, and like how to make this happen. It was all there. It's just, I had to look for it. And I saw that it was a thriving community, especially in Illinois, broadly. And so, and since then, as I've been homeschooling and just kind of doing what I do, like before I was, like while I was home with my children, I was a part of like, it's called MOPS. Now it's called MomCo, but a lot of moms I was in connection with who, and I led I was, like the, oh gosh, what is it called? But if you weren't in MomCo, that's good. Right. But I helped, I was like a facilitator for the group. like led it for a couple of years after being there for a few years. And anyway, so in my journey of, as I'm just doing what I'm doing with my children, a lot of other families in the community are noticing like, hey, like you're getting really great results here. How can I do this? What can I do? Like, can you teach me how to like do what you do with your kid? Because she's just doing so well and they're doing so well. So what we've seen is a lot more people homeschooling and having the desire for it. And it's just being, it's way more, I would say, popular, or like people see it as a viable option, especially in our community. Still have a long way to go, but it's not as not obsolete, but as what's the word? Yeah. Weird.
Well, I mean, you asked the question, like you said, when you were searching, kind of doing your due diligence, you said like, hey, do Black people even homeschool?
Right.
And I think many years ago, it was certainly less common. Many, many years ago, it seemed like it was like the weird rural kids or something who were making their own clothes. But and God bless those people. They're trailblazers, I guess. But I think what we see is that it's very, very common. I mean, I think what you guys were able to connect a lot of the people in the legislature to, especially, is that the reality is that homeschooling isn't just a white rural phenomenon at all.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I've been saying to the legislators is that homeschooling is actually the most hopeful thing that's happening on the education landscape in the Black community. I know in Chicago, I don't like to necessarily, I can't speak for the entire Black community, but what I see in Chicago, folks went home at COVID. The schools were closed. Folks had their kids with them. And what we saw is that people came to a couple of realizations. Number one, folks are like, hey, I like my kids. Like they're smart, they're funny, and they grow and learn stuff. And I like to see that. Two, they saw the content that was being taught in the schools. They saw, like Aziza was saying earlier, the low standards. They saw, some of the difficulties, and this is not to come at teachers. I love teachers and the teaching profession, but they saw some of the difficulties that teachers might have trying to manage a classroom of 30 something kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And they felt like they could do this. So post COVID, a lot of folks were looking at the outcomes that they're getting for their kids, the environments that their kids are in, and taking this step to homeschool. And it's one of the biggest problems, David, that I had with the bill, is that it seemed to me that it would put up a real unnecessary barrier to this movement that's kind of, I mean, a lot of folks are doing it, but it's sort of still a movement that's kind of in its germinating phases. And to try to squash that right at the beginning, was something that just really was not, it was untenable for me. It's one of the reasons that I got like kind of psyched up to get involved.
Yeah. Well, so you all decided to open a micro school. And the first time I ever heard of micro school, I was like, it's just a very, very tiny school, just very tiny. But I think micro schools are really the future. It's a school for ants. But, you ever seen Zoolander? Anyway, I think that it's, but I mean, as a community, that we work in, San Diego community, we really see micro schools as one of the key drivers in education innovation and unleashing so much potential. So how'd you decide to open a micro school, and tell us about it?
I absolutely did not start out trying to open a micro school. I was just trying to support parents and families who I knew who were kind of like, where this epiphany was happening in their life of like I can do this. I can help. I can teach my child. They were just feeling empowered, but at the same time, they were feeling those same things that I felt, which are, can I do this? I don't know. Am I equipped? I don't want to be alone while I do it. All of those kind of like emotional and internal hindrances. And just wanting kind of that community and support while they did it, because that's just how our community is. I don't know. I can't speak for the entire homeschool community, but what I see for us is that they want to be involved, they want to be connected, and they don't want to do it alone, and they need the support. And then secondly, there's a barrier, just I would say, financially for families, because a lot of times, maybe it's a single parent. Maybe it's maybe they do have maybe there are two adults in the house, but the one income doesn't work to, the other parent or the mom needs to do something else, like they have a small business on the side, or they they have something else that they're doing. And so they can't commit to it 24/7, 365. And they just need just a little bit of support to make it happen. Otherwise, they would have to do something totally different, like go to a school. So I was like, this is like, why does it have to be either or? I was like, we should have a thing where we should, where it shouldn't be that, like either you send them to school for 7 hours a day, every day for the rest, until they're 18, or you just be home with them, no breaks or anything for the rest of their life. And so I was like, where's a happy medium? And so that's where We School kind of came from. Just, I was like, maybe, just like a flexible schedule. So I call it's a flexible schedule learning center for families who homeschool. So what we do is we give them the opportunity to be able to, they learn in small groups and things. Parents come, they can either drop their kids off or they can stay for a little bit, which some parents do stay for a little bit. But and we offer like enrichment classes and small group learning, and they get just some a little bit more rigor at their levels, but we keep it individualized, personalized for each child. And then at the same time, we're also like kind of equipping parents and empowering them to learn how to teach their children a little bit, better give them some things. Because there are some things that I learned in the School of Education that I think are helpful. It's not anything that would disqualify a parent from being able to teach their child, but I can, give them some of these tools, and they take it and run with it. And we just see so much huge improvement in families and kids. And what I see a lot of is a lot of parents come from public schools. And they're like, my kid just really is not doing well, and I need something else, but I also can't do it all myself. And so they come into our environment and they just radically improve. I just got a text a couple of days ago from a parent, and she's like, my kid has only been here for 2 or 3 months, and he has learned and done and proved so much more in the 3 months he's been with you all since, and we've been doing this homeschooling thing than the 2 years that he was in the public school. So, so we do that. The kids love it because they, they're all friends, and they get to, be with each other, do different things. And we do all kinds of things, entrepreneurship classes and civics and speech and debate. It's just fun things. Yeah.
And I'm going to say, David, because my wife has been a bit modest. But I call her the Harriet Tubman of homeschool.
I am.
And,
that is
a part of that is because We School started in my basement. Because it was like folks who were like, I want to homeschool, but I have this business. I want to homeschool. I got this other thing. So can my kid be with you like on Tuesday? And she was like, sure, bring him over. I mean, we already had a bunch of kids in a big basement. So it was like, let's do the thing. And it just continued to grow from there. And so it's where it is now. And I honestly, my contribution was probably only to identify at some point, like, you have like a micro school now, right?
Right. I didn't even know what I didn't know what a micro school
That's fabulous.
I was just trying to solve a problem, and I wanted to encourage people to stay on this very, very viable course for their child and their family and themselves. And I didn't want to see people lose out on all these great benefits. I want them to be able to access the benefits, but have the resources and the support around them to do it. So that was We School.
Yeah, well, you're an education entrepreneur. So, well, hey, for our last 10 minutes, I want to go talk about HB 2827 and the fight that we've just come through, and it'll probably come to us again next year.
Yeah.
But just set it up a little bit. Illinois is, oddly enough, one of the freest, least restrictive places to homeschool, which is pretty amazing considering Illinois. And then, but, one of the reasons that Americans for Prosperity was very interested in this is, nationally, there is an effort from some on the left to restrict parental freedom when it comes to, homeschooling their kids. And there's some, I would say, troubling narratives that they put out there that aren't based in fact, but we saw this as, Illinois was one of the first steps to trying this in other states. And we do think that this is going to happen in other places. So what happened with the legislation in Illinois was very consequential, we thought, from a national impact. And that's why partners like the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and others, were involved also. So, the bill sponsor said it was about protecting kids from abuse, at least initially. What did you think about that narrative? And, how, when you were both, because I know you both talked to legislators directly. Aziza, you debated you both testified in front of the committee and were frankly treated disrespectfully, I would say, by the bill sponsor. You don't have to. And
The nerve.
and then and then also did media with the bill sponsor and others. So how did you address the questions that were put forth in HB 2827?
I thought it was extremely disingenuous, because they were phrasing it like they were saying, oh, it's to protect children from abuse, but nothing that they were recommending would actually do anything to address that or stifle it in any way. It really was just putting this unnecessary burden, unnecessary paperwork, and honestly, using resources that should really just stay with the public school system. They already have very little, resources. The administrators and they're already overtaxed, they're already overburdened with what they have to do. So now to task them with giving oversight and guidance or whatever to, portfolio reviews and all this stuff to the homeschooling community, I thought was unfair to people who really, the public school is their only choice. And now using those resources to do that, I think that was a bad idea already. And I'm like, have you been in a public school in the last 20 years? Like, they don't have the capacity. And then secondly, I thought it was very offensive to the homeschooling community. Here we are making solutions and seeing success, and we're the ones protecting our children, honestly. This bill was saying it wasn't to protect the children, but we're protecting our children. We're protecting our children from the super low standards and there's research that suggests that 1 in 10 students are mishandled or sexually mishandled or some kind of misconduct at the hand of a teacher or a coach or someone at the school. And so I'm like, these are problems that are already happening and we have it on record. And so to go into the homeschool community and to say that there needs to be this oversight, this regulation, I just thought it was super offensive. And then public schools are you already have 100% regulation over these schools, and 30% of the kids are not proficient in math and reading.
30% are.
I'm sorry. Right. So 70% are not proficient. And so I was just like, you have way too many problems to try to suggest that if you get a little bit of oversight here, that you can somehow improve it. We're already doing well. We're thriving. We are very resourceful. We are seeing so much progress, especially in the Black community. Kids are scoring as much as 15 to 42 percentiles higher than their public school counterparts. So to put this out there as that we're coming to help you or to give you, to make it better. I'm like, that is just not it. And then on top of that, to say that if you don't do this, that now, you're we kind of take this fast track to criminalization and all these fines and things like that. I was like, this is this is just an attack, and it's very unnecessarily and intimidating, especially for people who would, because what I see in our community is that a lot, especially Black people, they want to homeschool, but you come against so many kind of struggles, because it's not as common. So you already kind of have a target on your back for wanting to do something that's out of the ordinary. And then you because, it's a lot to navigate. It's a lot to know. And so, and you want to do it well. And so to add extra pressure and intimidation to families who are just trying to do the best they can for their children, I just thought it was very, very offensive and unnecessary. And unfounded. So those are mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was the narrative, and it was kind of the underlying philosophy, right? So you come with this narrative that we're protecting children from abuse by regulating homeschool. And what you're trying to imply there is that homeschooling is somehow dangerous, that it is this kind of hotbed for child abuse, when there is actually already data to suggest that homeschool children are much less likely to be victims of abuse. And so this doesn't mean that we don't take, child safety seriously. I mean, I think that child abuse is a huge, massive problem in our culture. No child should ever be subject to any abuse at all. But to suggest that regulating homeschool is going to do very much to curb that is just inaccurate. There are some things that are huge cultural problems, and they will require large social movements in order to curb that in the society. It's easy for somebody to, if I'm going to abuse my child, it is already against the law.
Absolutely.
Right. And so making another law that I've got to fill out a paper, nobody's gonna be like, oh, I was gonna abuse my kid, but since they put out this declaration form, maybe I better not, right? That's not how
homeschooler now.
that's not how this gets done. So that narrative to suggest that homeschoolers, the homeschool parents are more dangerous than other parents, was, like my wife said, offensive to me. And then the kind of philosophy that the way you improve people's lives is to bring them into more contact with the state, with the government, with law enforcement officials, all this stuff. That is a philosophy that I don't ascribe to. And it's one that a lot of research exists to suggest for all people, but especially in Black and brown communities and in, poor and working class communities, the opposite is actually true. The more and more contact you're having with the government, the more and more contact you're having with the state, the more and more contact you're having with law enforcement, the worse life outcomes are going to be. And so I'm much more interested in what are the kind of community-based, family-oriented solutions that we can come up with, because I'm all for fighting, child abuse and, educational neglect, any of those types of things. I'm for it. But I don't think that the solution is to bring people into greater and greater contact with law enforcement, state, government. And there's a lot of research that suggests that I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, it flies in the face of, frankly, what the state of Illinois, the legislature has been doing for the last number of years. And I actually think in a lot of cases there were decent reforms, because we recognize that we're locking too many people up. We're putting them in the system from an early age, and we're kneecapping the whole community for a long time from really being able to, get the jobs they need to have, or, just getting out of a criminal mindset and a criminal system that was penalizing them. And the idea that we would then, if someone just happened to not file a piece of paper to say they were homeschooling, to then say that we would subject them to that system, these are the very people that we want to build around. Folks who take the initiative to educate their children at difficulty to their own lives, and that we would turn them into criminals was just unbelievable to me. And I thought so tone deaf and so wrong for what we're, the type of communities and the type of state that we want to have.
Absolutely. I mean, and if anybody just go to the DMV and try to get a driver's license or an ID.
Right.
And tell me that some kind of state mandate is going to make homeschooling easier and smoother and safer for everybody. That's just not how it works. It doesn't flow that way. The more we're able to invest in our families, our communities, churches, all the institutions that actually help make life really work, I think that's going to be better. This idea that bringing folks into greater contact with the state, which I will say, I don't know if we're supposed to, but this is one of the things that the bill's sponsor actually did say to us off the mic, is that this is our basic philosophy. If we can get homeschoolers to be in more contact with the state, that's going to be better for their education. That's going to be better for safety. I told her, and I say here, I completely disagree with that philosophy.
1,000%.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree more.
She also, when I talked to her, her name is Representative Tara Costa Howard. We talked to her just a bit afterwards. One thing that I kept pushing back on her with her, I was like, how, in your mind, how does this actually help to curb abuse? She was like, well, it's just a tool. We're not saying it does everything. It's just a tool, and it's a tool that we can use to be able to help it. And I said, and that is exactly what my problem is with it, because we're giving a tool to an enforcer or, to somebody, and we're just assuming that this person who's going to wield this tool has the utmost respect and dignity and applies the law equally and to and in a wholesome way to all people. And I'm like, it could very much not be that. And then we're also assuming at the same time that every homeschooling family, with this bill is kind of suggesting that every homeschooling family is a potential haven for abuse. And so now we're putting this, kind of unanimous tool in, not unanimous, what is it? Like
unregulated.
Very good. Right. And this tool into the hands and of somebody who might have ill intentions toward a family who might have great intentions, and so that already can be a setup for a very terrible situation for families who just want the best for their children, who are doing everything already, overcoming so many odds just to be able to do this. And so, to make this happen for their families. So I'm like, we don't need to put barriers. We need to encourage them. We need to celebrate them. We need to use them as examples, honestly, for parents all over of how to advocate and to get involved with their child's education. Another thing with the bill is that it was super vague in all of the kind of language. And she even said, well, it's on purpose because we want to be able to have it, so that so that it could be kind of flexible to, kind of address, homeschooling and all its different facets. And I was like, that is also scary as well, because now you're saying, like, part of the bill even was like to suggest like to give the enforcers, like whoever this truancy officer would be, the ability to be able to talk to their children, one-on-one. So I'm thinking, like, where does this meeting take place? How, what are my rights as a parent? Just all the things. And she was like, but just having this vague language. And then how often are these portfolio reviews supposed to happen? What's the standards for them? And I was just like, this is a recipe for disaster. And it can be crippling for this community.
Well, it was pretty clear that their faith was in the government and the bureaucrats who were going to enforce this, which I don't think we share. So we're going to short on time, but so right now the bill is, as we record this, is due to some procedural hurdles that did not clear, is probably dead. Right. I'm not sure. There's always in Illinois until you get to the end of session, things always could live again, but it's very unlikely in this case. But they'll probably come back next year and try to pass some modified version. In other states, we kind of see this maybe percolating too. So since you've gone through this over the last number of months, what would you say to anyone who may face something like this in another state or still in Illinois?
Yeah, I would say to folks in Illinois and all over the country, whether you're facing this bill or not, this is the time to start to network with other homeschooling families and really other families in the community in general. Because I think that we've seen even families who are not homeschooling families who understand that bringing sort of like the right of a parent to educate their child under attack this way is problematic. Because there are folks I know who are like, I don't homeschool, but if I want to, I want to be able to. Right. And so, I think it's about building sort of networks that are going to be there to fight against this. Illinois was blessed to have some networks already in place. And so that's a good thing. And in Illinois, we're trying to strengthen those networks and bring more people into it.
Yes, absolutely. We have, can we, I think it's one thing that has been a blessing in this whole process is that I'm seeing the importance of uniting with, because we're so much stronger when we're together. And so, just bringing everybody together. And I actually saw that at the beginning. I said, this is going to be a blessing because we're going to everybody is going to, we're coming together and we're not as disconnected as we once were. And so, so one thing I'm very excited about is, cause I've been able to come in with a lot of other leaders, come into contact with a lot of other, leaders in Chicago homeschooling communities, especially in the Black and Brown community. And so, and they're all kind of saying the same thing that I saw, which is more people want to be involved in this. More people need this. And we want to make this stronger, not weaker. And so this has been super motivating for me. We actually started with We School Education Foundation. So just so we could just work on this, because I'm seeing this as an adjacent issue. Yes, I want to help the families who will come to We School, but I also want to just empower parents in general. Because there are, like I said, I'm Harriet Tubman for homeschooling. So parents who have not yet taken that jump, I want to just help them to see that you really are your child's like best hope for the educational outcome, regardless of your background or experience in education or not, and so I just want to see more families take on this mindset of, I am my child's primary teacher. And so we just have a lot of ideas about how to do that and how to kind of publicize homeschooling in a much bigger way. And then to give people the support and access they need to resources, however much or little they need, be it through WeSchool or the co-ops that are close by to them. So I'm super excited about like, this has just got me so like motivated, like, yay, like we can, just bring this more together.
Well, I want to tell you guys, we met recently, right? A number of months ago around this issue. But I know you to be, you're already leaders in your communities, pastor, running a micro school, number of other things. And then you really stepped up as leaders in this movement against this unnecessary regulation of families. And I really applaud you for that. I loved it because you were such wonderfully knowledgeable and articulate voices and had the message that we felt like was the most impactful for to sway the legislators that we needed. And it really undercut a lot of the I thought cynical arguments that were being made on the other side. And I'm looking forward to partnering with you in the future because unfortunately I don't think this fight is over. Yeah. Right. But and maybe we'll have the Butlers go and talk to folks in other states who are facing similar things because I think that would be pretty darn wonderful. Because
it's coming to them too. I think this is a national issue.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your guys' partnership, and I really appreciate you guys being on the show with us and telling your story, and look forward to talking to you again.
Yes. Real quick. I just want to say that I really thank our 6 children who have been so like patient with us and helpful and encouraging. Like while we were in those hearing rooms, they were like, okay, we're just going to sit tight and, like help with the baby, with the body, so, I think they're also our, like they're
definitely part of the heart and soul.
They are. They've been so gracious, with us and so helpful too. So,
well, I'll never forget walking through the Capitol when it was packed.
Oh, my God.
Packed. And what we said in the open is true. They shut the doors and said one person comes out, then another person can go in. That's how packed it was.
Like,
it was 6,000 people there. But I was walking around. You guys were in the committee room. You probably didn't see this. There were people, families, kids, parents sitting everywhere on all the different floors in the atrium listening to the hearing on their phone. Like it was like a 1940s baseball game or something. They were listening to the hearing on their phone because they cared so deeply about what was going on. That's why we sent in more witness slips than had ever been seen for a bill 3 times
in like
than had ever happened in the history of the
40,000 witness slips.
It was amazing.
That was incredible.
So it was a mobilized community and yeah, and I appreciate your guys' leadership and part of it. So, well, thanks again for being with us. All right.
Thank you for all you do. This is great.
Thanks. Hey, folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.